Hello and welcome back to the Traffic21 podcast. I'm your host, Alante Whitmore, and I'm so excited to be sharing our next episode. Today you'll be hearing from Bonnie Fan, who is the Traffic21 Women in Transportation Fellow. Bonnie's interest in urban life, transit, and technology began brewing during her time as an economics major at the University of Chicago. Seeing the developmental and infrastructure challenges in the Southside, along with her growing interest in entrepreneurship, she wanted to create new, socially conscious solutions for the city. After graduating, Bonnie joined the Chicago Transit Authority as a data scientist on the performance management team. She worked on service optimization and manpower management projects. Now in her second year at Heinz College in the data analytics track, she is creating a foundation of both policy and data she can apply to new mobility technology and its solutions and impacts on transportation. Listen in as we talk about her experiences as a graduate student and on the Traffic21 student leadership team. You're listening to the Smart Transportation Podcast by Traffic21 at Carnegie Mellon University. We're innovating mobility for all. Thanks for tuning in. Sitting here with the Traffic21 Women in Transportation Fellow, Miss Bonnie Fan.
Yay!
Hello, Bonnie.
Hey, Alante.
Thanks for taking some time to talk to me today. I guess just tell me first what drew you into, well, tell me what program you're in.
Yeah,
and
right.
What you're kind of focused on.
So the program title is very long. When you talk to Sarah, thankfully, maybe it'll save some time because we aren't in the same program, but it's the Master's in Public Policy and Data Analytics, which I usually shorten to Policy and Data. Before this, I was at CTA.
What's CTA?
CTA, Chicago Transit Authority. Or sometimes I simplify that to people. It's like, it's the Chicago Trains and Buses organization. And I was doing data work for them in their performance management department. Sort of data and then tech, like small tech tools.
Okay.
The program, I was looking for something, like more generally, I was looking for something that gave a sort of like groundwork or foundation of in a combination of like data and policy, so hence the name, I guess, the branding of it. The Traffic21 aspect I didn't even know about until I was at some like graduate school fair, where they have like a gymnasium of like representatives and you go around to booths, and so the CMU rep was like, oh, you would be interested in this, and I was like, I've never heard of this before. And the thing is, I had also been considering like planning programs too, and I decided against that because I wanted to sort of get at the data and policy intersection more broadly. But I still wanted like to have a foot in transportation, so this is perfect. The other, like when I was thinking about other options, there wasn't as strong a focus in transportation. It all made sense. When I was leaving, my old boss was joking like, oh yeah, you're going where the autonomous vehicles are, I could come back and like make our fleet autonomous. I'm like, haha, that sounds so far-fetched. Like, AVs aren't real. And then you come here and you're like, wait, they are so real.
So real. So you were in Chicago kind of realizing that it was time to take the next step and considered a couple of different programs, but you were able to be recruited to get here. We're so happy to have you here. And tell me a little bit about your first year as a fellow. Maybe, I know we have weekly meetings, and so maybe what's been one highlight from your first year as a fellow?
Yeah, so I feel like the highlight in coming in, I didn't realize this, but like I feel that this program and also being in Pittsburgh has like pretty dramatically changed like how I've thought about the type of work I want to do, and I wasn't expecting that. I thought I had like a crystal clear idea, like this is exactly what I want, and like these are the things I'm going to take and leave with and never look back. Thankfully, it's not really like that. I think the highlight has really been actually the the transportation community here. And ironically, it was in your hometown in Detroit where like I really got to know them. So and this is mainly like the folks in the wider Pittsburgh community. Specifically, I would point to like the Untokening conference. So that's what happened in Detroit, as where like specifically wanted more of a focus on like equity within transportation, and this conference was like had just been formed 2 years ago by like transportation folks who felt like the main like bike advocacy groups or whatever were basically too white, and so they created Untokening, which like it's in the name kind of, and I'd heard about the conference from another Detroit encounter at Allied Media. I went for the first and only time last year. Oh, nice. And so there's a organizer there his name is Uni, I think, and he was in a like last minute panel. I decided to join, and I just watched him like cram like 5 shrink wrapped bags in this giant bike bag. So I was just like asking him about it, and apparently he was like someone who brings a fold-up bike wherever he travels. And so similar to when you're asking folks how they got to the conference, wherever he flies, he'll bring this fold-up bike and then bike from the airport directly to where he needs to go. So it's fun. So you can see, it was a good encounter. So he recommended this conference. And then Untokening, I was like, I don't even know, like, if I belong, so I didn't even apply to go until the very last week, and then I, out of panic, like, emailed the organizer saying, like, you know what, I think it's really important to go, and, like, do you have any spots open? And they connected me with other folks from Pittsburgh who are going, and there's, like, a whole big contingent of folks from Pittsburgh, and that's where, like, I got to know them. And what's good is that after that conference we continued to meet, and so I feel like from that, like, I developed friendships, and from that also like more of a understanding of like based on their work of some of the like community based advocacy in terms of transportation, and that's like what I had been sort of looking for in that terms of understanding. But it's also changed how I think about like technology and policy more broadly, in terms of when you get to the conversation about like equitable or ethical deployment or usage. I think what I've been challenged in is like knowing or seeing that my understanding and of that type of deployment is really actually informed by the relationship that I have with these folks more than anything else. And so I feel like that's a stronger way to approach the question of like what is the right way that we should implement like technology with public impact. Like it's not really like you do want a sort of you want your equity scorecard, and you want your standards for public engagement, but I think like seemed stronger and made more sense was like building that relationship. So, and also sorry that I'm rambling so much on this, another person that I didn't actually meet at Untokening but met through her coworker was someone in Seattle at SDOT who is specifically working on equity and data and new mobility. So all the things that we think about, and so I had a call or two with her, and it was really cool to kind of get a sense of like what she was doing or what they were doing in Seattle, and she basically made up her title. She was looking to get into the like sort of the equity focused department, but there's also this new mobility like pilot projects department that she sort of got pulled into. So she basically combined those job titles and like is helping to create standards for equitable deployment. But they're also starting like a series of like talks with community members about like how to do these sorts of projects. So that's really exciting because I think this is also really new. Like these deployments are new, and then sort of like figuring out how to talk to people is also new. So
yeah. So it sounds like one, you've been able to really tap into the transportation advocacy like community here in Pittsburgh, and as a result being attached to and connected to the Pittsburgh transportation space, that network, and plugging yourself into it, which is always a good thing. You also, it sounds like, kind of have a new understanding for AV deployment, and it's grounded in the people that's going to impact versus just an abstract thinking, which I'm sure your degree and your classes provide you a lot of that, the foundation, but the work that you do, the connections you've made help to kind of fill in the gaps between what you're learning in class and what's really happening on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what I do appreciate is that there is a lot of like I feel like our program is very porous in like the the interaction with like people who are actually doing things in the world. So right, like you were my TA for Sean's class, right? And so Sean was great in terms of bringing in like people who are doing that work and in the city and working on sort of new technology or new projects or companies, whatever. Also, I think Rick. So I was a part of Rick's class on technology and future implications for the Steel Valley. And that was also a really good one in terms of like thinking about are there like what types of solutions there are for in connecting like the question of transportation with like development and community revitalization, and also like talking, like actually going out and like meeting and talking to people and trying to come up with like, or doing research to like, try to like be a part of that conversation. So I appreciate that. Like, I think one of the reasons why CMU like was a standout option for me was like my undergrad was in an institution where it's like very theory based. So I was like, okay, I need to go somewhere where like they're actually, doing things. I think right now I'm somewhere in the middle of like, okay, I need like a combination of the two right now. But I think that's what I appreciate. It's like, yeah, there's that direct connection, and even at the academic level, if you like look for it and you seek it out. Okay. So
that's really cool. Bonnie shares her favorite experience as a Traffic21 fellow. In what ways have you felt like the Traffic21 fellowship has like helped you through your first year?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know you think about this a lot, like in terms of support. We were talking about this too. I feel like I was one of the lucky ones in that you do get a lot of support, a lot through the form of Lisa Kay, our amazing program director, but I don't think that is necessarily common for everyone, especially entering into a master's program. You're just kind of thrown into the mix of things. So that was very helpful in terms of orienting. And the other thing is like, being sort of thrown at like all, any and all opportunities related to like transportation technologies. So I know that, Railvolution was happening. I remember going to like a traffic signal at Massai. No, it's not traffic signal. It was like the ITE conference. And a lot of that is like new to me. And I mean, was especially new to me coming in because I'm so used to, I hate the way that sometimes I talk about like public transit in the sense that's like, oh, we're like the poor cousin and we don't have anything and we're like, it's all paper and like a huge mess. But sometimes it feels that way. And so the fact that there are like these like sort of not magic bullet technologies, but like basically almost, sort of technology sort of at a very advanced stage, and seeing that applied to transportation was like very, very cool to see that like actually on the ground. And a lot of the stuff that I was thinking about coming in was like, how could this be used in a public transit context, which a lot of it can be used in that context. It was just like a completely different world coming in. I think also like a lot of, so the fellows help organize the Smart Mobility Connection series every 2 Fridays, and it's basically getting researchers from Traffic21 to talk about the research like while eating food, which is, it sounds more simple I guess than Actually, it is that simple. So, but I think the nice thing is that you then get to hear about like just this menu of different like research projects, and I know that a lot of the research that folks were talking about like was is groundbreaking, and like I know that I've brought up, for example, I think there's one project that like talked about how to generate synthetic TNC data, so like Uber data or Lyft data, and I remember that being like such a problem in terms of like the data sharing aspect of like, oh, you know, we can give your data, but we're concerned about privacy, and so, you know, these public agencies, you can't have that, which I think it was just an excuse, but maybe that's just my opinion. But this process was like super interesting because it's also like it ties into a broader conversation about like data anonymity, and so that was really cool. Oh, that was John Shen. Okay. So yeah, and like I know I mentioned that to like Alex, and he was like, "Oh, that's super interesting." So just things like that where you're just like, "Oh, this is the first glimpse of like stuff that can change like the field." So that is super exciting.
So it sounds like you're getting exposed to a lot of information, a lot of opportunities as well, which are only going to help you with your trajectory into your career, right?
Hopefully.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you've been learning a lot this year too, as a result of like the SMCs and other activities we have.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. So what's been your favorite part about being a Traffic21 fellow?
Well, I think I kind of, talked to, like, honestly, having that, like, little, like, community network is really nice. I think also just having, that foot in sort of the transportation research world, and seeing kind of, like, what is sort of being put out there in the world and that sort of thing. I think it's really important to have a sense of, like, identification, like as you're interacting with other people, like, anytime you're talking to someone, they're like, why are you talking to me? Like, what do you hope to gain from this? Or what can I get from you? Why should I even bother with you? So having like that fellow designation helps a lot in context building when you're trying to connect with people. They're like, they automatically have an understanding, like, okay, this is why this person is interested in transportation and might have some like insight or input into like my thoughts about transportation. So I think even just having that itself, like even if there wasn't like the amazing like support and network around it, like that's already super useful to have. That being said, there's also that amazing like support network too, so which is great.
Nice. So Bonnie, tell us where you're headed off this summer, even though this is coming out post-summer, where you'll be spending your summer.
So yeah, I'll be in Boston with the city of Boston. They have a, within the mayor's office, a department called urban mechanics. Mm-hmm. So they have folks that they bring in for the summer, and it sounds like mainly you work on sort of pilot projects that support other departments in the city. They seem to be like the most creative, like, local government group I've ever encountered, which is, I mean, okay, the bar is not that high, but they set a high bar. So yeah, I'm excited just to see kind of where that approach is. And there is I read a lot into, like, there's a lot of consciousness into like the type of works that they get involved with, because there can be a lot of like, I mean, I think there's still the danger of like getting into the flashiness of like, oh, we're entrepreneurial and like blah blah blah, we're the smart ones who will solve all the problems. There's still a little bit danger of that, but like I think they're at least very aware of that in their language and framing of things. So I am excited to like be there just to see like what sort of work is being done and meeting the people who are also thinking about the same things.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you the best over the summer, Bonnie.
Thank you.
What's one thing you wish people knew about transportation?
Oh, I think that people see it as a niche. I think now there's more of awareness of it, but it's still framed as like a hobby, like interest, or like a a nerdy interest. And I think there's like a lot to be said for, you know, in talking with the folks that I've been trying to organize things with, in terms of like having a series of conversations about different transportation topics, the mobility thing. You know, there's like a variety of like housing and food access and health. And so I think as we were talking about planning this, or like what types of topics relate to transportation and how, the conclusion is like basically transportation is all these things. Mm-hmm. Like transportation is housing, transportation is food access, it is education, like and so I don't know, maybe I'm reacting too strongly to like how like the very niche world that I see of like how people see transportation is like, oh, you know, it's this like people who like to play SimCity and like or like collect train cars, or, you know, right. And it's like, yeah, it's great to have that nerdy interest, but it is also like an essential utility. Absolutely. And yeah, I'm sure there's other stuff, but that's
something important. Thank you so much, Bonnie. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this interview. We'll be back next month with more stories from Traffic21. Until then, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to the Traffic21 podcast from Carnegie Mellon University. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Stay in touch with Traffic21 by following us on Twitter at Traffic21CMU, that's Traffic21CMU, and join our weekly newsletter, The Smart Transportation Dispatch, to find out about exciting innovations in mobility. Sign up on our website, mobility21.cmu.edu. Thanks again for listening.